All right, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, we have Henry Lai, the TNE Capital Group. Henry began investing in real estate over 14 years ago and is the founder of TNE Capital Group, a multifamily investment firm. He is currently a general partner in a portfolio of 150 million in multifamily assets, 1,425 units. Is that correct? The 1,425 units and investor in 923 multifamily units.
Yeah, I mean, we actually just closed on another deal with our partners earlier this week. So
Awesome.
add another 324 to that.
Awesome. Way to go, man. And TNE Capital helps investors grow their wealth by investing in value-add assets that provide advantaged cash flow, and double-digit returns. So, Henry, without further ado, I will give the show to you. I'm going to mute myself and give you the camera.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you all for participating today in this session. I'm glad you can all see my screen. So I just wanted to go over the objectives of today's presentation. So first, I wanted to introduce myself in hopes that you guys will reach out to me and I can reach out to you after this presentation. We can get to know each other a bit better, see if we have aligned goals and maybe if we can work together in the future. Second, as the title of this presentation says, I'd really like to share with you the top 10 things that I wish I knew when I was starting out in multifamily investing. And then third, just answer any questions that you might have, and I'll just open it up to everyone at that point. So first, I wanted to start with a quick disclaimer. So of this information, it's really just my opinions, it's my experiences. It definitely doesn't reflect the opinion or position of Multifamily Investor Nation, or of the summit or any of the organizers or the sponsors of this event. I don't want to make any representations, any claims about the accuracy or completeness of any of this information. And then third, I'm not a licensed attorney, CPA, or financial advisor. So anything that I say, please don't interpret it as legal advice, accounting advice, or financial advice, or any type of interpretation like that. So let me start. First of all, my background. So I developed my experience in the healthcare field. I've worked in a variety of positions. I've worked in R&D, finance, marketing, operations, and currently I'm in corporate strategy. I'm working for Siemens Healthineers, and I help them evaluate opportunities. I was a management consultant for Accenture and a strategic advisor for 2 startup companies. So the transferable skills that I have from there are a lot on the deal evaluation side, the underwriting, the spreadsheet modeling, making presentations, stuff like that. I think that my breadth of experience is really my strength. Second, real estate experience. As Brandon had mentioned, I've been a real estate investor for over a decade now. I'm a licensed realtor in New Jersey and in New York. I started off by house hacking, and then I was just a landlord. I shouldn't say just a landlord. I know it's a lot of work. In fact, it's because of that I stopped looking for small multifamilies. I was really just looking at 3-family and 4-family homes because that's what me and my friends were interested in. But in attending a lot of RIAs, a lot of real estate meetups, I was meeting a lot of people who were just doing different things in real estate, right? So there are people who are doing fix and flips. There are people who are doing, wholesaling. There are people doing tax liens, development, and then people who are lending the money. And I finally had met the Multifamily Group, although it was a bit difficult for me to find. And I'll kind of go on and discuss that later on in the presentation. In any case, in my experience so far, I've been a GP on 5 deals, 1,749 units in Texas and in Florida. And I've been a limited partner in 5 deals in multiple states. And I wanted to share with you the breadth of experience that I've had from both passive investing and in active investing. My formal education, I went to UC Berkeley and to Kellogg School of Management. But as you guys probably know, in this industry, it probably doesn't matter very much that what your formal education is. So, second, I wanted to share with you all of my key learnings that I've had, through the, I guess, year and a half, 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years. It depends on when you start counting, because I was definitely filling my head with a lot of knowledge and not taking action for a while. Anyway, I wanted to start off with a quote. So this is by Jack Ma, right, the co-founder of the Alibaba Group. Never give up. Today is hard. Tomorrow will be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be sunshine. And the reason why I put up this quote is, it just makes me think about the fact that, I think all of us right now, we're willing to delay our instant gratification today, right? We could be watching TV, watching Game of Thrones. We could be, going out and enjoying our lives, all the time. However, we're taking the time to really build something for ourselves on the side. And hopefully, if you guys have done it, long enough, that you're now full time in real estate. But in any case, I really admire people who plan for the future and are willing to sacrifice a little bit of today. I mean, I definitely believe in living and enjoying every day of your life, but also to plan a bit for the future and just to sacrifice a bit so that you can be happy and secure and financially free. So the first 5 things that I wish I knew when I started in multifamily. So I'm going to go over all these at a high level, and then I'm going to jump into each one. So first, multifamily is an uneven playing field. It's definitely not fair at all. I think that there are a lot of advantages for people who are veterans, people who have money, people who have connections and experience. Number 2, I discovered that multifamily was not very prominent on Bigger Pockets or many real estate meetups. And, I probably started looking, I'd say 3-4 years ago, and it's been growing quite a bit. But I was trying to educate myself, and I definitely think that everyone should start by educating themselves whenever they're getting into a new field or a new subfield. Third, I think you can learn a lot through passive investing. I definitely started first by passive investing. I had a lot of good and bad experiences, which I bring to the table now. Now being on the GP side, I know how investors want to be treated. I know, how I want to kind of be the type of GP that I was looking, forward to talking to when I was a passive investor. And as I mentioned before, I'm still a passive investor in 5 separate deals right now. Number 4, you really, really, really need great partners to be very successful in multifamily investing. And I know it sounds obvious probably to a lot of you, and the reason why I repeat the reallys is because I'm struggling with it myself right now. I see that there are definitely people who have been quite successful and done very well for themselves, but the people that I see that really just skyrocketed and just taken off in their real estate career, they have found just the right partner for them, just the right person to complement their abilities. And they've really progressed, much farther than people that I see that do it alone, such as me. So I definitely have been, partnering up with folks, but on a deal-by-deal basis. And I'm still looking for, who would be my long-term partner. And that's one of the reasons, right, that I wanted to present this topic, because as I mentioned to you, I wanted to connect with all of you after this presentation, because I'm looking for that long-term partner that I can have my career in real estate with. Number 5, joining a multifamily group will give you a major advantage in starting out. I really think that, in looking at, Bigger Pockets, I know that one of the, main values that it has is don't go with a real estate guru. Don't, spend thousands of dollars, to learn from a real estate guru. And I understand that, I think, for certain types of real estate, right? For example, I think going to the RIAs in wholesaling, in fix and flips, investing in small single multifamilies. I doubt that you would really need a guru. And I do think that, you can find everything that you need, probably have bigger pockets. I think that, there's so many more benefits to joining a multifamily group, and I'll go into that, a little bit later. But having said that, it's still not for everyone, and I, will give you my thoughts as to, what I think you can do if you don't join a multifamily group, because I think that's totally doable. And as we see, many of these multifamily groups are really increasing in kind of the prices that they're charging for you to be part of a group. You definitely can, network yourself and kind of develop your own partnerships. I see a question here, so I just wanted to answer that. All right, so it says here, you're employed full-time and GP in 5 deals. Your website said, that you partner also with Ashcroft Capital. Can you talk about what you do in the GP and what Ashcroft does? So, first and foremost, I think it depends on each and every deal, right? So I have partnered up with Ashcroft in the past. If you guys have heard me, speak at other events, what I've said is, that I was lucky to be able to partner with, some of the best in this industry. And I refer to Ashcroft. So I really enjoyed the partnership that I had with them in a couple of deals, because they allowed me to get in and focus just on one area. And, depending on, I guess, how far you've gotten into multifamily, that the major divisions are going to be deal acquisitions, financing and asset management, right? And then you could break those down into many more details. I would say that, when you're first starting, it depends on your strengths and on your background. But for me, right, it made sense for me to focus first on the financing. So I did help with them in their investor relations, but I'll explain a bit further about how I do that and how I don't think a lot of capital raisers are kind of really living up to their role and doing, I guess, the full amount that they should be doing for their investors. So I would say that I'm a bit in each one of those 3 pillars. So first, I definitely look at the underwriting. In some of the deals that I've done, I've been much more involved in underwriting the deal and kind of batting back and forth, with the other general partners and saying, I really think we should change these assumptions. And these are the reasons, I have better market research, or, from my interviews with the property manager, this is what I've learned. In me, walking the comps, this is what I've learned. So I definitely believe that underwriting is a very important part of it. And I think that it's very important that people underwrite and understand the underwriting before they jump into a deal, whichever part of the deal that they're in. Otherwise, they don't know if it's a good deal. And then the asset management piece, I think, a lot of people, they'll divide that up into, one, you might be doing your continuing communications, right, with the investors. Second, you might be, making sure that you're on track for the business plan and that, you're hitting your projections, that you're on target. Third, you might be managing the property managers. And then, next, you might be managing the renovations team or the renovations crew if your property manager is not doing that. So on that third pillar, I was definitely involved, with the investor relations, because I did bring on investors. But I guess it depends on which deal is what I'm saying. But, I've been much more involved in kind of the asset management piece in terms of making sure that we're on target, making sure that, we're actually going to make our projections and our distributions for our investors, and speaking on a regular basis, with the rest of the GPs and looking at the numbers and planning out what is our next, year and a half. So, all right, sorry, I got another question. It's how do you manage both being a GP and working full-time and taking care of a newborn? Well, I will say that it's incredibly difficult. I've had, I guess, the luxury of taking off, a lot of time in order to take care of my new baby. But having said that, I probably did about 10% of all the projects that I wanted to do in multifamily and in real estate. So I had a whole list of things that I wanted to accomplish when I took my FMLA and my 3 months off. And by the end, I looked at it and I probably did 3 out of the projects. So I was quite disappointed. I think that it all depends, right? I think in multifamily, it depends on what you focus on. So if you're actively involved in a deal, then yeah, absolutely, it's really hard. I mean, I'd say I'm putting in 40, 50 hours a week, maybe even 60 into the real estate. And then for my regular job, I'm probably putting in about 50 hours at a minimum. So when both of those are going at the same time, it's really, really difficult. One thing that I've managed to do is really express the fact that I don't want to travel as much for my corporate job. And I think that's true, given the newborn, but also it'd be very, very difficult to travel for my corporate job, travel for real estate, as well as be home for the family. All right, so let me dive deep into each one of these. So first, multifamily is an uneven playing field. So the reason why I say this is, when I entered multifamily, what I discovered was, or what feeling that I had was, so many people have a lot of experience, they have a lot of money, they have all the network that they need, for all the different, vendors, whether it's the lawyers or the accountants or, the inspectors or, they have all the broker relationships. So what can I offer to them that would actually be of value? And I think it's uneven because the people who have been in multifamily, they really have a leg up on everyone else. And, you're trying to figure out, well, what skills do I have? What strengths do I have that I can offer up, right, for other people? I think that it's tough because, you're competing with folks that, they might have done real estate for their full-time job, or, they might just have a lot of disposable income. So, maybe it's very easy for them to start up a podcast. Maybe it's very easy for them to get a lot of assistance and, hire out people who are doing the underwriting and underwriting like 10 deals a week, for them, and they only need to do certain tasks. As far as the track record, I think everyone wants a track record, right? Your future partners, your potential partners want a good track record. The brokers, the sellers, the lenders, they're all looking for a good track record, right? So it is really hard, I think, starting out in multifamily and putting all the different pieces together so that the stars align. So I really think that the solution is, you have to find the partners with the money or the track record or both. I know it sounds obvious, but there's no other way to do it, and that's why they say it's a team sport, especially when you're starting out, and that's why you need people on your team that have the resume, right? And it all depends on the type of deal. You could talk with a lender, and they say, oh well, it looks like your entire team, nobody has this type of experience doing such serious renovations, right? Or doing, such a large repositioning of this property. And so, they're not going to trust you with, $30 million for a loan. You're going to have to find people who will sign off on your loan. You're going to have to find people, who have the liquidity in order to sign off on the loan as well. It all depends on, what you're actually bringing to the table. I think, that is why in my introductions, I talk about my corporate experience. I talk about, what I can do, what I can offer. And, if it's not clear to you guys so far, I mean, I think it's the fact that I bring a certain level of professionalism to my work. I definitely can underwrite, and I can, do spreadsheet modeling and analyze deals. I feel actually quite comfortable with, starting the broker relationships and keeping in touch with them. But again, I think that, that takes kind of a regular effort, because if you're not responding to them when they send you deals, and you're not saying, hey, I like this deal and here are the reasons why, or I don't like this deal, this is what I'm looking for instead, then they're not going to go to you because they know that, you're not focused on this, right? And you're not going to help them close on a deal. So anyway, I definitely offer my skills. I offer my sweat equity. I think it's one of those situations where you just say, anything that you guys need. I mean, if it's even, I don't know, taking notes, transcribing, for a meeting or, for a podcast, whatever people need that will get you the experience and kind of help you build your reputation and rapport with the partners that you want to work with, I'd say, go for it. And the third thing, as I mentioned, join a multifamily group. And the reason for this is it helps uneven the playing field. Or I'm sorry, it helps even the uneven playing field. Better said that way. And the reason for that is you're going to be in a group with a lot of people who have a lot more experience. And because you're all having a shared experience, you're all part of a certain identity, a certain group identity, you're going to want to help each other. You're going to, want to make each other more and more successful. And, again, it makes it easier. You don't have to join a multifamily group. Second, I mentioned that, multifamily is not that prominent, on Bigger Pockets and on many, real estate meetups. And the reason I say this is, I was researching on Bigger Pockets for a while, and I just never saw that many posts, or if I did, they were, all from the same 3 to 4 people at that time. And then the real estate meetups, again, they were just focused on other aspects of real estate. But it wasn't until that I started meeting more and more folks who were really into multifamily and just saying, I want to focus on multifamily. And then I started going to the multifamily conferences that I went, wow, everyone here is just focused on multifamily. And it was, a great awakening. But I definitely think that is something that I wish that I would have known earlier, because I think I wasted a lot of time going to meetings and events and networking with people that we just don't have as much of a shared interest. Sure, they're interested in real estate, but not multifamily, or they're not at the stage where they're ready to be in multifamily. So, how do you educate yourself? I mean, the way that I did it was I listened to a ton of podcasts, YouTube. I took some Udemy courses, listened to audiobooks. And I started going to the multifamily conferences. I think just by going to these conferences, you meet hundreds of people that are like-minded, that have similar interests, and you start having the same conversations, and you just learn and you network at the same time, which is wonderful, right? Because if you guys went to the best ever conference, I think one thing Joe Fairless said is, if you want to shortcut your progress, you want to be educating yourself as well as building the relationships at the same time. So any activities in which you can do both at once is really what you would prioritize. And then the third thing is, if there aren't any local meetups, then start your own, right? Start your own local multifamily meetup. Definitely helps with the leadership platform as well. Right. So next one, you can really learn a lot from passive investing. So what I didn't know before, even though I was a passive investor, was as a passive investor, you can ask all the questions that you'd like from the sponsor. And you can ask for a lot of stuff. I mean, you can ask for the deed after the closing. You can ask for the market research, the underwriting, the appraisals, the inspections. You can ask for a property update call, just one-on-one, and say, I really want to talk to you about this. I want to know what's going on. I want to learn. And as I mentioned before, because you're on the receiving side, right? You're passive. You're not actually doing anything that would affect the success of the property or of the business plan. You want to be communicated with, and you realize, wow, this is how I'm being treated by these 4 or 5 different syndicators or syndicator groups. How would I want to be treated? So you take the best from each and every syndicator out there, and you say, wow, you know what? I really like the way they did their newsletter. Or, you know what? They didn't make their projections. I really like the way that they openly, transparently communicated that. They, talked about a plan forward and helped kind of relieve any worries that I have that they're not doing 100% of what they could be doing to make this property successful. And then lastly, I think that being on the passive investor side, you just learn a lot of subtle cues as to, how each and every sponsor is building and maintaining trust with you, right? I mean, it has to do with every phone call, every conversation, every email that you have with them, and you see if they're on top of it, if they're on the ball. Sorry, let me just pause for a second. I saw another question. Okay, how are you compensated by the GP when you partner with them? So this is another one of those, it really depends on the deal that you have with them. So first of all, it depends on the urgency. So I've heard of, people who needed, let's say, $150,000 to $200,000 within a week. And that's because they don't have enough for the earnest money. And because they were in dire straits and they needed that right away, the person who was providing that amount of money, whether it's from themselves or from the money that they're raising, they were able to negotiate a really high percentage of the GP. I think it's like 15%, 20% of the entire GP. And as a lot of deals, maybe they're already 70-30, so 70% goes to the investors and 30% goes to the GPs. So then you're saying 15% of that 30 goes to just that one person who only did that one piece of it. So I think it depends on the deal. It depends on how much you're going to raise. It depends on how quickly they need it. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, overall how many other people are raising, that capital or doing their investor relations. How much do they need you versus how much do you need them, right? And if they need you a lot more, then you're probably able to negotiate a lot more. But I think that the easy way for me to think about things is, first I say, in the deal, how are you splitting it between the GPs and the LPs? And then within the GPs, if, let's say, one person were to bring 100% of the private equity, how much would that be worth? And then, what is the rest of it? So is it 50-50? Is it 40-60? Meaning, is it 40% given to, somebody who raises all the, private equity, and then it's 60%, divided up between the, who found the deal, who underwrote the deal, who's doing, the debt financing, who's doing the asset management, who has the renovations experience, so on and so forth. So it all depends on what you bring to the table and what that current situation is. All right, so as I was saying, you can learn a lot from passive investing. The action items that I think that I take and that I would recommend to other people is get to know a lot of sponsors, right? Through conferences, through meetups, through the phone. Ask a sponsor that you trust, right? To help you analyze a deal and determine, right, whether he would invest or she would invest in a particular deal. And I usually will be like, I don't want them to analyze their own deal, right? Because they definitely have a vested interest if they're bringing that deal to me. But it's more, a deal that they have nothing to deal with. I would ask them, can you take a look and just let me know, as a passive investor, would you get into it? And that's what I would do if I were completely new, right, to this field, because I want to know, right, hey, how are you looking at it? Walk me through what you think are the strengths and weaknesses of this particular deal. I would get an FAQ list, right, a frequently asked questions list, just off the internet, off of, podcasts. And I would ask, a sponsor that is presenting you with that deal, asking you to be a passive investor, a ton of questions before you invest, right? I mean, they're beholden to you to answer any questions that you ask and to make you feel as comfortable as possible and to make sure that, this matches with your goals, because it might not. And if they don't make you feel comfortable enough by answering all of your questions, then you don't have to invest. And, really take advantage of the fact that you'll be in this relationship for the next, 3 to 5 years, 3 to 7 years. So throughout the investment period, ask all the questions that you want, right? Say, hey, what's going on with the property? I saw that you sent out the quarterly financials. Can you walk me through it? There's so many things that you can ask the sponsor to do if you're an investor, because they want you to invest again. They want you to invest again in the future, and they want you to feel like they have a handle on running this business, this, you know, multifamily. All right. So you really, really need great partners to be very successful in multifamily investing. I know that goes without saying. But let me explain to you some of my reasons why. So first, I think that multifamily is a ton of work, right? I know that, you know, a lot of people have dreams of just, you know, getting into multifamily and then relaxing on the beach and, you know, never working again. But I think that, you know, if they really dig down deep and look under the covers, they'll realize that it doesn't come free, right? It's one of those get rich slowly type of things, but I do think it's faster than some other vehicles. But because it's a ton of work and it takes specialized knowledge and skills, depending on what you're trying to do at that moment, right? Like, are you trying to develop that relationship with the broker? Maybe you're not good at that, or maybe you're not living in a target market. So, you know, you don't want to be flying out on a regular basis in order to maintain these relationships. You know, maybe you're not, you know, in a target market, so you can't be closer to the property management company, right? And, you know, going in and doing, you know, drop by surprise visits whenever you want. So it all depends on what your contribution is to a particular deal. So you can't do it all, nor would you want to do it all, because one, you probably want an expert for that particular portion, right? If you want, you know, the best loan possible, you're probably going to work with the best mortgage broker, you know, that you can find, rather than, you know, try to, you know, do what you know and kind of piece together, you know, what you've heard and what you've read, right? Because you're not an expert in it. And I just wanted to highlight that part. You know, it's not the best and highest use of your time. I think that's a frequently used phrase in real estate, right? If you own a plot of land, what is the best and highest use of that plot of land? Are you going to build a parking lot? Are you going to build a casino? What makes sense for that location? What would bring you the highest amount of income? Finally, you know, I think it is really, really difficult to find a good partner, and you need to be so careful with who you partner with. And that's why I would start early and, you know, take a while to really vet your partners and to determine who it is that you want to work with, because it really is like a marriage, right? Even if you get into one deal with one person, one group, you're going to have to be with them for that entire investment period. It could be 5 years, 7 years, you know, who knows when you'll actually exit from that investment. So my proposed solutions are: one, understand at a high level what is the multifamily investment process. So as I had mentioned you, kind of those three pillars, right, of acquisitions and financing and asset management, and the major tasks that need to be done. After that, I would kind of break it out into its components, right? So for example, I think that if you're in acquisitions, there's definitely the relationship development piece of it, in which you're developing the relationships with the brokers or with the sellers or, you know, owners. And then there's the underwriting piece, in which you're trying to see, all right, is this a good deal or not? You're trying to play around with the numbers. And those are very different skill sets, right? One is developing the relationships. Second is kind of being a spreadsheet jockey, right? You know, I guess third, another part of it is probably putting together all of your vendors and all of your teams, right? If you're acquiring a property and, you know, you need all of these different, you know, inspections to be done, you know, you need your, I don't know, risk analysis team to come in, your insurance team to come in, you know, you need kind of your team on the ground. It takes a lot to manage all of those people. So are you going to do that while you're also developing the relationships with the brokers and the sellers? Are you going to do that while you're underwriting 10 deals a week? I mean, it just depends on your situation, but it is hard to do all of that. I used to think that, you know, for capital raising or, you know, investor relations, that it's just, you know, one primary bucket. But then I realized you can really break it out to a lot of things. If you imagine what are all the different things that you need in order to develop investors, I will talk about that actually in a later point. But, you know, like, you can really divvy up the tasks and say, how do my strengths really apply to this set of tasks? and say, within, I don't know, capital raising, I can do A, B, and C, but maybe you can do D, E, F, right? I would take a self-assessment. I would ask others, what are your strengths? And I would create your elevator pitch. So one of the things that I did, and at the very beginning, and it might sound to you guys like, I was trying to develop investors, but I really was trying to understand what other people perceived as my strengths. So I sent out these emails to all of my network, actually, that I've known throughout the years, whether it's, elementary school, high school, college, all the experiences I've ever had. And I asked them, two really simple questions. I asked them, what is it you think that I do that in general I do better than everyone else, right? Or on average, better than most people. Second, what do you think that, what are some things that you believe that even if I could do that, it's probably not a good fit for me? And by doing that, I basically send out a self-assessment, right? Lots of people are taking Myers-Briggs, the Myers-Briggs MBTI test. They're taking, the different color test, the personality test to get to know themselves. And I basically sent it out saying, can you help me with this? I know that we haven't interacted in, 5 to 10 years. But it would really help me out as, I want to understand from the people and all the different experiences in my life. I did that, but then I also took that opportunity to catch up with people and say, hey, how's it going? What have you been doing? This is what I've been doing. And that's how I brought up multifamily investing and, got in touch with, I don't know, let's say over 100 more people that I'd lost touch with over the years. So I think it's a really good kind of two-pronged approach, right? Or you can kind of kill two birds with one stone there. Third, I would attend as many multifamily events as possible. If you're unable to attend in person, of course, you can develop the relationships over the phone, over Skype, over Zoom, like this. And, you can join a multifamily group. As I mentioned, once you're kind of in a shared experience, you just feel the camaraderie and you feel that you want to help each other and you want, each other to succeed. But the main purpose is just to meet as many people as possible, as you never know, right? Who is going to be your future great partner and who's going to introduce you to, that person that you're going to work with for the next 20 years. So I really opened myself up to going to tons of these multifamily events, these multifamily conferences. And I think, even with this, being a virtual conference, I think, we can reach out to anyone who signed up for a Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. So I really, really love the use of technology here and the fact that we can gather so many quality people over one weekend because we don't have to worry about the logistics because it's all taken care of by technology. And of course by the people organizing it. But anyway, I would increase the number of touch points that you have because you really want to vet your partners and you want to have multiple experiences with them. Because I can tell you that, for me and people who have worked with me, they know that I really take a lot of time to try to get to know the people that I'm going to work with. Because I realize the risk there. And I realize the risk of bringing my group of investors to a particular deal, because what if I don't align in my values with the lead sponsor, right? What if, they may say that, they put investors first, but then when you actually put an example in front of them, they say, no, I would actually do that instead. Meaning, I don't know, let's say, put the GP ahead of the investors, right? But I do think that, one, I can give you an example of, partners that I've worked with in the past and the process that I went through. So I would go to a multifamily conference or event. I would see who I would click with, right? So first, you might click with, people and you're just, small talk. and discussing things that have nothing to do with real estate. You see if you like each other. And then you see, how long is that lasting, right? Are you guys able to kind of feed off of each other's vibes and get along for, a long period of time? And then, I would say, have your elevator pitch to basically say, look, I'm really interested in multifamily. This is what I've done so far. I think that I can contribute to the, underwriting. I think I can bring some capital in terms of, private equity from my investors. And then I think I can really help to, asset manage in terms of driving the business plan. What do you like to do? And, what are you good at? And let's, see if there's a good fit. And I think you have a lot of those discussions, and I know that sounds very obvious, but what that evolves to is you actually talking about a particular deal. And when you talk about specific deals, then you realize, one, what is the level of knowledge and experience that that person has in a particular domain, right? And then second, you realize how conservative they actually are, right? Everyone can say that they're conservative, but when you look at their assumptions, when you talk about what they're actually comfortable with, let's say for their reversion cap rate, then you can really say, okay, so if you're willing to raise your reversion cap rate by 100 basis points, then I know, yes, you're at the same level of conservatism as I am. You are really risk averse. Or if people are just like, I added 3%, to the expenses, and I think, it's fine. And then I find out, through market research that that type of expense has doubled, right, in the last 3 years. So, you just kind of have to vet through all of these discussions about very specific deals. And, it's sad to say, but, you do have to take somewhat of a leap of faith at some point, because you can't get through each and every conversation. And oftentimes you don't have enough time, right, to vet people. I also would conduct background checks, right, on people that, on the general partners that I would work with. Although I think that is a good idea, I think that there are 2 points that I want to bring up. One, if you're new and you're not bringing that much to the table, it's difficult to make too many demands, right? Because you're like, oh, well, I can bring $25,000 to this deal, yet, I have a list of 10 demands, including I want to, do a background check on you guys. They'd say it's not worth the effort. We're going to go with this other general partner who can bring $1 million, right? So you just have to balance that. The second thing is, I usually will ask who is being underwritten by the lender, right? Because usually the lender is at much more risk than many of the investors in this deal, right? Like they might be bringing, 35, 40 million to the deal. So they're really, really going to vet the partners, the general partnership, and especially, the key principals and the people who have the experience on the deal. And so any level of background check that I do, that I put, a general partner through, it might not be worth it, right? Because what I can buy with a $49 background check report or $79 background check report, it's going to be nowhere near the level of due diligence that the bank does, right? Or that the federal agency does in order to underwrite this person or, these 3 people who are the key partners on this deal. So I've kind of backed away from that, just depending on the situation. And I've gone more for asking everyone in my network, have you ever worked with this person in any capacity? Have you ever had any experiences, and what was it like? Was it positive? Was it negative? Give me the context. And I'll go through that entire round of asking everyone that I know before partnering up with somebody. All right. I think all right, just checking the questions. All right, so joining the multifamily group will give you an advantage in starting out. So first, then let me start with the problems, right? As I mentioned, I think it is quite difficult to find a partner when you're starting out. I mean, it all depends on the person, right? I did, I think, in some cases I was lucky, but it depends on what the situation, what you bring to the table. It depends on, if you're in the right kind of meetup groups and, who introduces you to who. But if you're not in a multifamily group, you really have to be pushing for it, right? You really have to be pushing to find that partner, and you have to be going to these events. I just think that joining a multifamily group will give you kind of that head start, right? Because you already have a group of people who have kind of, they have very similar goals, right, to what you have. Most of the people have been where you are, but a year before or 2 years before. And, if they don't know you at all, and they just meet you at a conference, they might be hesitant to partner up with you. But if they joined up, right, to the same multifamily group, and you both, believe in, let's say, wheelbarrow profits, right, with Jake and Gino, or multifamily, launchpad with Jonathan Twombly, or think multifamily, right, with Mark and Tamil. I think that they're much more likely to trust you very quickly, right? And I think that it just helps fast forward your progress, because you're trying to get educated, you're trying to find your own niche of, what you're going to focus on, and you're trying to find partners and a deal all at the same time. So although, I know that Bigger Pocket says, don't, sign up for a guru and all this stuff, I do believe, don't sign up for a guru, but I think that you're joining not so much for a guru, you're mainly joining to be part of a group, to be part of a team, because most of these people are going to be your future partners, right? It's very likely that somebody else in this group is going to find their first deal, and you're going to want to contribute in some way, in some fashion, to help out, right, with that deal, and that's going to be how you start. So I don't know. I think that the last point is just, in me starting out, I didn't know a lot of people who were interested in multifamily. I knew people who wanted to buy single family homes, people who wanted to try fix and flipping, but I just didn't have people around me that were really aware of the space. So that's another reason. Oh, thanks. I think somebody just mentioned to me that, Vinny Chopra has a group too. There are so many groups. I think I put 4 or 5 on here. Like there are definitely a lot more than the groups that I've mentioned. And each one of them has been raising their prices, over the last few years, for whether or not you want to get into them. If you want to, talk offline, I can give you my thoughts on, the research that I did, on each one of the groups. But I also think it's not for everyone. And I think it's very possible for you to be very successful without joining a multifamily group. And I have met people who have done that. So my proposals are: 1, determine whether or not joining a group is the path that you want to take, or, if you want to find another way to network, right? So some people, they're in a geography in which they already know that there are a bunch of meetups, there are a bunch of congresses or conferences that they can go to, in which they're already meeting the same people in these groups. So they don't need to sign up for some group when they already have that network, right? It will help a little bit, just in terms of kind of the trust factor, and, getting them to kind of trust you faster, because you all feel like you're part of the same thing. But I think that, trust has to be developed individually anyway. So if you're able to consistently attend these meetings and these RIAs and these conferences and network on your own, I don't think you really need to join, a multifamily group. But another thing is, if you haven't done your first deal, I can tell you it is incredibly helpful having somebody in your back pocket that has, 10 years of experience, that you can ask any questions to, throughout your whole journey. So it just depends on what you're looking for. So if you want to join a group, speak with students of each and every group. So I definitely did the, shopping around, right, in which I was talking to, the kind of the mentors or the heads of each group. But I think what is more effective, right, because each head of their group, they're going to basically sell you their group, right, because they think that they're providing the highest value for what you want to get. However, I found it incredibly valuable to just interview the students, right? Especially students that have been in more than one group. I can tell you, for me, I'm part of 3 different groups, right? That, we can talk about offline. But anyway, each group has their kind of pros and cons, and I definitely think that it helps you kind of progress much faster than if you were to do it alone. All right, I think a couple other questions came in. What city are you in yourself? So I'm in White Plains, New York. I like to invest in Texas. I'm exploring the Florida market. So, our most recent deal was in Orlando. But yeah, I mean, most of my deals have been in Dallas, Fort Worth, and in Houston. As far as which local conference do you think is the best to attend in the East Coast besides this? I think it depends on what you're looking for. I myself am attending the Ultimate Partnering Conference. It's through Dave Lindahl's group, or the RE Mentor. So that's another group that's not on here. I mean, Dave Lindahl is huge. He's been around for a long time. So that is in July. So it's coming up real soon. I think it's really great because basically you're outside of the conference room networking the entire time. I mean, you could be in there listening to the sessions, but if you're all about networking, people know that, like you're fine if you just stay outside, and you will get 3 full days of networking, whereas some of these other places, they don't give you as much. Let me just look to make sure I'm reading the chats. Okay, great. So, right. So my last thing that I wanted to say is just whether or not you join a multifamily group. I mean, it's entirely up to you. I don't want to sell to you any particular group. I just think whatever you do, take action. And that's the primary reason that I started joining groups, because I had a lot of head knowledge. I had, online modules, I had books, but I wasn't taking action. And it wasn't until I really joined, a group and got the networking, to be a priority for me, that I started taking action. So just whatever you do, do something to forward your progress in multifamily. All right. So the next 6, right? Number 1, how critical it is to understand the underwriting. Next is, having access to money really helps you to succeed, much quickly in this space. And that's related, to my first point, that it's an uneven playing field. Third, that, developing a strong investor network takes a lot of time, energy, and automation. And 9, capital raising, it's not a role to be taken lightly. Like a lot of people, they say, oh, well, why don't you just, start off capital raising? That way it's easy, but they don't understand all the different things that come along with it, or they underplay it or undervalue it. And I don't think that's a good thing to do, especially for your investors. And the last thing is how critical it is to understand the legal documents. So first of all, right, as I mentioned before, most likely for your first deal, you're going to join other sponsors that have found the deal, and you're going to try to find that little niche role in which you can say, hey, I can help out, let me help out in whatever way that I can. But how do you know to join that deal if you don't really understand the underwriting? So I think a lot of people are eager to join other people's deals just so that they can be part of the GP. But I think it's more important to first understand, am I being a part of a good deal, right? It's kind of like if you're just buying a single family home, like, are we completely overpaying for this house, or, are we getting a great deal for it? So, I'm not just being, part of this partnership and we're going to lose money. Or even worse, I'm bringing other investors to a deal that I don't know if it's going to be good or not. So I think that, some folks are afraid of, or, they may not be very good at Excel spreadsheets. I think, that definitely happens, right? But I think that, you need to get yourself to a point in which at least you understand the key drivers of a good deal, and the key risk factors, and the key questions that you would ask for each and every deal. And, not only to vet the deal, but that's what you're going to be asked by your investors, right? So you're going to have to answer those same questions anyway. And you're going to have a really hard time if you don't really understand how good the deal is because you don't understand the underwriting. Next is, I think especially in this market, right, what we find is there's a lot of there's a lot of money chasing deals out there right now. A lot of people think that we're at the top of the market, just depending on the sub-market that you're in. You have to be creative in making a deal work, right? You have to find additional streams of income. You have to figure out, oh, you know what? In this particular sub-market, you're able to, I don't know, build pet fences and then charge another $30 for it. You're able to, do valet trash and, charge another $50 per month for it. Or, in this market, that they would not like an upgrade of granite counters. So there's no way that you're going to upgrade, the counters to granite, something like that. But you basically need to think creatively about how you're going to make the deal work, because what if 10 other, serious syndicators looked at this deal and they passed on it? Then you're going to think, well, why did they pass on it? Is it a bad deal? You're going to have to creatively make it work and make the argument for why this is a good deal. And it's very hard to do that without the underwriting. And as I mentioned before, you should not be bringing other people onto a deal if you don't understand why it's a good deal. So proposed solutions, I definitely think that, they're, great, seminars out there just on YouTube. I have bought a couple courses on Udemy myself, just on underwriting. Even though I felt comfortable with underwriting, this is focused specifically on underwriting. The different multifamily groups, sometimes they'll hold like a workshop, just on deal analysis. I think Multifamily is having one in November. I think, start actually underwriting. So take the offering memorandum, the trailing 12 months and the rent roll from the brokers, and start underwriting your own deals, right? Like if you get on some of these major broker lists, right? Let's say it's, NKF or, CBRE. They're going to put you on the list for deals, and then you'll automatically get the links to download this information. So it's not like they're, bothering you and you feel like, oh, I need to get back to them in 24 hours because, they know, that they sent this information and got it for me. Third, really find out who are the excellent underwriters and talk to them. And, I really love conversations where I, just ask people that I really respect, in underwriting. And I say, well, what do you think about this? And like, how much would you, increase your cap rate? And, like for expenses in this particular market, like how much should, should trash be? How much do you think, the taxes should be? Should we increase it by 5% or, 10%? And, what are some kind of tricks of the trade, right? Some of the things that I've noticed myself, right, and really looking at the underwriting is that people do it in all different ways, right? So, for example, people say, oh, well, I'm taking a 3% acquisition fee, but are they taking the acquisition fee as a percentage of the purchase price, or are they taking it as a percentage of the purchase price plus the renovation costs plus your, additional working capital? In other words, the entire transaction. Are they taking the asset management fee as, a percentage of the entire transaction on a monthly basis? Or are they taking it as a percentage of the monthly gross rents? Little things like that, right? It sounds like they're just, little details, but they matter, right? So for example, if you're taking the asset management fee as a percentage of the gross rents, if you're not making enough gross rents, you're not going to be taking that asset management fee. However, if you're taking it of the transaction or of the purchase price, then you're going to be taking that asset management fee no matter how well this business is doing, right? And if you're not asset managing, you're going to want to know, are your partners willing to forego their fee when the business is not doing well? But they're just little things like that you don't really see unless you look into the underwriting. You look at the actual formula of, where's it taking this percentage from? All right. So the last thing that I like to do is I like to write 5 things specifically about why I like this deal and 1 to 3 things about why I don't like this deal. And the reason for that is, you want to keep in your mind, like, why would somebody invest in this deal? You want to have it kind of as sound bites, because as you talk to people, if you're going to be part of the deal, and you want, let's say you want to bring on a general partner, or if you want to bring on a limited partner, you're going to have to espouse the merits of this particular deal. You're going to need to sell the deal to investors, because they're going to want to know, how is this deal better than everyone else's? I could be putting my $100,000 with anyone else. Right. So I'm looking at the time. It's 3 o'clock. I'm at number 7. All right. So as I mentioned before, having access to money really helps you succeed much more quickly in this space. So number 1, you might want to spend the money to educate yourself more efficiently. I think that joining a group, although it could be expensive, just depending on the group that you join, it could be entirely worth it. So, for example, I remember I had to sell this to my wife and say, look, if I join this and if I actually become part of a deal, this pays for itself many times over. And I think, being part of my first deal, I said, look, based on how much I paid, like in me finally getting into a deal, this paid for itself, I think 2.5 times over. And my wife was like, oh, okay, wow, that's great. I do see, the money coming in. All right. Second, I think that, you need money to actually be developing the relationships, to be visiting the properties. You need money to actually put in your, letters of interest, to actually bid on a property. You need money, in order to qualify for the loan. And, you probably need, to raise private equity for the deals. Some people, they say, oh, no, I'm just going to be focusing on acquisitions. But I personally have the belief that every GP should be bringing some investors to the table. And the reason for this is, even if they say, oh, yes, I'm invested in it. If they invest $100,000, it's not as much skin in the game as if they bring 3 investors. Because guess what? They have to answer to those investors for the next 5 years, as to why this property is doing well or not doing well. It's not just, oh, well, I lost my own money. You're losing money for, your friends, your relatives, people who put their trust in you. So I actually think that every GP should be raising money. And then lastly, you may need extra money in case a deal goes south, right? So it's just like owning a single family home. When you're, a landlord, you might need to replace the water heater. You might need to replace the fridge. There are a lot of extra expenses that you might need. I mean, hopefully you plan for it ahead of time in the underwriting so that you have enough working capital and enough reserves. But in case it goes south, I definitely have heard of general partners saving the deal by putting in their own money, like putting in, $200,000 of their own cash to, make sure that this business is still running. Proposed solutions, definitely you have to find the people, right, that have the money or access to the money, but make sure that it's clear what you're bringing to the table, right? So if you're bringing the deal, maybe, you're also bringing your expertise in the underwriting. So whoever is bringing you investors, they know how conservative you are in underwriting a deal. They know that you have, dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, right? That you're really focused on the details so that they can trust you to bring their investors to you. Second is find people who are interested in signing up for specific parts of the deal, right? Because there could be people that say, oh, you know what, I'm interested to take the risk for the earnest money, but I require 10% of the deal. Or I'm interested in helping out with the pre-close cost, but this is what I require in return for that risk. Or I want to be a limited partner, and this is the type of deal that I'm looking for. Or I want to be a key principal, right? So for those of you who don't know key principal, it's signing off on the loan for either your net worth or your liquidity, so that the bank knows as a group that you guys have, I guess, the total amount of the loan covered through your net worth, and you have, I think usually it's 10% of the loan for liquidity amongst all of you guys. And then lastly, you know, offer up your skills and your time to make up for the lack of money, because money is quite important, right? You can't do a deal without money. Right, so developing a strong investor network, it takes a lot of time, energy, and automation. So, you know, if you want to become a multifamily investor, you probably need to raise private equity for deals at some point, unless, you know, you've worked so much with a partner that he will specialize on that and you'll specialize in other parts of the deal. Developing and maintaining that network of pre-qualified and eager investors, it takes a lot of time and energy up front. I usually will tell people, you know, if you know somebody that might be interested, introduce me to them, let's say a year ahead of time, because you don't know how long it will take for them to feel comfortable. And I'm constantly thinking in my mind, you know, where are they in that funnel, right? Like, first, are they, well, I guess I'll probably get into that here. You know, when you're trying to find investors, you want to know, are they first, you know, even open to real estate? Second, are they interested in this segment of real estate? And then third, are they interested in this geography? Do they believe in the growth prospects of, you know, Dallas or Austin or Houston, you know, or do you have to convince them of it? And then once they've bought into, you know, those different factors, do they believe in this particular deal? But they're kind of going through a series of funnels, but you need to do that over time, because once you get that deal, you know, under your belt, it's a very short time period. They may need to make their decision to actually invest within a week or two, just depending on that deal. Anyway, the last thing is, you know, automating your investors' relation processes. It could take a lot of time and energy. So, you know, for all these problems, one, you know, I think that, you know, a solution is definitely finding a partner who's willing to bring the money, and that's what their specialty is, and then build trust with them, right, on a regular basis. I definitely will not take it for granted if somebody's going to bring $1 million to, you know, one of my future deals. I really need to develop that trust and have them believe in me that I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to, you know, miss out on the projections, you know, for a particular deal. Second, you know, develop your own network of investors, no matter what part of the deal that you're doing. As I mentioned before, it's beneficial for all GPs to bring at least some investors, and that's what I require, you know, when I'm going to invest with somebody. Third, you know, use an RCM tool, right? I'm sorry, a CRM tool, a customer relationship management tool. You know, contractually or, you know, active campaign are pretty common ones, but basically it allows you to keep track of where they are in that funnel. Oh, I just wanted to let you guys know that, you know, the next speaker is Richard Wilson, and, you know, he is in the room already. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I will be finishing up soon. He should be starting at 3:15 Eastern time, but definitely don't go away, as I'm sure he'll have a great session as well. The last thing is hire virtual assistants, right? What I found is there's so many menial tasks, right, that you can automate. I mean, even just hiring people on Upwork to, you know, develop your PowerPoint presentation. I mean, I did this one all on my own, but I think that, you know, there are just times where, you know, you could do the work, but you want to, you know, use your time for the best and highest use, right, of your time, where you can generate the most amount of value. All right. Number 9, capital raising. It really is, you know, not a role to be taken lightly. And the reason I say that is, you know, to simplify, there are some syndicators that, you know, I think they mention capital raising as just, you know, one task. And, you know, they might even, you know, devaluate by just saying, oh, you know, so it's not really your deal. You're just, you know, capital raising for it. However, what I've learned is there's so much more responsibility, you know, if that is one of the activities that you have as a GP. And again, legally, it shouldn't be your only activity. You have to do more than just bring the money. You know, otherwise you need to be a licensed broker dealer, you know, for registered with the SEC. All right, so there's a lot of work that goes into investor relations before a deal, during the entire investment period, and after a deal. I think some syndicators, who they capital raise, they don't take this role seriously. And I've learned that both as a passive as well as an active investor. They don't vet the sponsors. They don't talk to each one of the sponsors and say, all right, you know what, I do, believe in them. I do believe they have the right track record. They have the right experience for this type of deal. Maybe they ran background checks on them, or not. Understanding the underwriting, as I mentioned before, I think is critical. I think, what I've learned is some people, they'll capital raise and they will not even do a walkthrough of the property. They haven't even visited the property. I don't understand, how they could not do that, because if your investors are trusting you with their $50,000, $100,000, $300,000, they expect that you vetted this deal. They expect that you walk through this deal, that you talked with the property manager. So if you're not doing that for them, who's doing that? Because they're doing the passive investing so that they don't have to do the homework. And then lastly, speaking up for your investors. I think that, a lot of people who join as, the financing portion, they're just so happy to be part of the GP. But I think one of the primary roles is in your meetings with the GPs, you're speaking up for your investors. What would be best for your investors? Monthly distributions, quarterly distributions, monthly updates, quarterly updates, how should you communicate to them? And just always, acting on their behalf. So I really believe, although it's not a legal fiduciary type of relationship, I think that, capital raisers should act as a fiduciary for their investors. And what I mean by that is, of course, in no legal term, it's just really the fact that you should do what's best for your investor, right? Is this the right investment for them? And are you being honest and transparent with them throughout the entire process? Are you basically working with them in a way that will build trust for the future so that they will invest with you again? Right, 314. So here is kind of a summary. I think the very last thing is just, make sure you understand the legal documents. And the reason for that is financially, it could really impact you as a GP, even if you're part of the GP, and then as an investor, it could really impact you because, you really need to understand the sequence of payments, the voting rights, allocation of equity and depreciation, and any types of fees and details with that. So with that, I'm sorry, but I'm done with my time. So I'm going to stop here. And if you have any questions, please email me later.
Hey, Henry. Thank you for that. I just wanted to go down through the question and answer box here. Did you get to, I had stepped out of the office, and so I might have missed some of these. So
yes.
Did you get all the questions in the Q&A box?
Yeah, I think everything except for the last one by an anonymous attendee. Do you think you could reach out to me? It's probably more of a lengthy answer. I'd prefer not to take the next speaker's time. If you could just reach out to me individually, then I can, speak to you and answer all the questions you need.
Excellent. So everybody, right there on the screen, that's Henry's contact information. And be sure to reach out to him. He'll be glad to answer any of your questions. Henry, thanks so much for being with us and providing all that information. Definitely, you do your due diligence, and that's what we like to see. You look at the details, and I know that makes your investors feel secure. So we appreciate you sharing your insights with us, and thanks again for being with us.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All right, sir. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for that session with Henry. And coming up next, we have Richard Wilson, and he will be joining us in just about 15 minutes, a little less than 15 minutes. So come back in room 2. And if you would, please register for the next conference. That's nextmfin.com for the January 2020 summit. And if you go to the podcast for Multifamily Investor Nation, post a review, send a screenshot, email that to Stacy at multifamilyinvestornation.com for a chance to win the iPad. And don't forget about our fundraiser that we are doing special today. I'm going to post the link again in the chat box. Click on that link, donate there. We have 2 $1,000 match contributions and 1 $5,000 match contribution already today. So please go to that, check it out. Whitney was just on our panel just about an hour, 2 hours ago. So go to the GoFundMe link, check that out, and please be generous there. So we'll see you in just under 15 minutes.